This is Audiogyan, and I am your host Kedar Nimkar. Welcome to a deep dive into the minds of luminaries from the Indian creative world. David M. Ton, an American guitarist, composer, and producer, once said, "The original source of any loop is whatever your sound is at the moment of input." Well, to unpack this and know more about looping, we have Vasuda Sharma with us on Audiogyan. Vasuda is a singer, songwriter, producer, performer. In fact, within being a performer, I have seen her live playing multiple instruments and live looping at Blue Frog long time ago. She's trained in Indian classical music. After composing many songs, she later decided to study music more rigorously. So, studied contemporary writing and production at Berklee. More about her in the show notes. Today, we'll try and understand some basics of looping in the context of music. So, thanks, Vasuda, for giving your time. And it's a real pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you so much, Kedar, for having me. And I'm very excited to talk about looping in a way that people have not asked me about before. So it's quite interesting. We'll go in depth, hopefully, about what it is and how I started it.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, your body of work has been not just purely looping, but I thought this concept is new for me. There's bunch of I'm sure there will be a lot of documentation which is already done on other parts of your work. But
Right.
looping, I thought we'll just see. But I wanted to start off with a more abstract or philosophical question that what does loop mean to you, or what is looping for you?
Well, looping, actually, the whole concept of looping started when I discovered this live looper. So before that, I never gave loop the word itself like a great thought. But there are loops in life also, the way your life happens in a way. So there, how it started for me is sort of a loop was being created in Bhiwani, where I was born. It's a very small town in Haryana, and every day I would keep doing the same things. I was pretty famous in my school for singing and being in extracurricular activities. But then I wanted to break free from that because I wanted to do something beyond that. And I felt like that loop was being created. So it's in a negative context, you would say that there was monotony happening in my
Mm.
life, so I just wanted to explore more, and so did my parents. So I think the whole idea of like shifting from a small town in Bhiwani to Delhi kind of was a breakthrough in my life, in terms of even culturally. There was a culture shock, major culture shock, when you're born in a very small town and suddenly you are in a metropolitan, and the way people are, the way people were, or students were with me in school, and it was a completely different. So I sort of enjoyed moving from one loop to the other. So in
Mhm.
Delhi, there was a different loop, and I would say that whole getting into pop stars, auditioning for Kokvi pop stars back in 2003 was also like breaking through and breaking out of one more loop that I had created for myself. So then shifting to Mumbai, and then doing gigs with the band, with my band Asma, for over 7-8 years, and then feeling the monotony again. So again, a loop was being created. Then
Mhm.
saying that, okay, I want to break out of this and then learn and go to Berklee College of Music, and come back with a fresh perspective. And I think Berklee sort of changed the whole idea of the way I would approach music. So, and a little before I went to Berklee was when I discovered live looping. So I would say that things have been happening for me in a loop, but especially the kind of loop that I discovered in live looping, I don't want to come out of it. I don't want to break out of it. That's like a high that I've never gotten bored of. And it's been what I started in 2010. Yeah, my first live looping gig. I discovered Looper, and I did my first ever singer songwriter gig in Blue Frog in 2010. And we're in 2023, so I'm still not bored of it. So because the permutation combinations, the possibilities are unlimited, even though it's pretty limited in the scope of how you create a loop. But there's
Mhm.
so many things that I discover every day about the looper. So till now,
Awesome.
I'm not bored of it. I enjoy it.
Yeah. So we'll definitely go deep into what these loop as a concept is. But when you said it's a in a negative connotation, it's also positive, because when you say looping, it's almost doing something like a riyaz, which is repeated over a long duration of time, and then you master, like the 1,000 hour practice or something like that. Do
Oh
you
yeah,
see it from that angle?
when you, because we were going philosophical, I think I went too deep into like my whole life journey for till
Mhm,
now.
mhm,
But when you look at it like that, when something is looped, be it practice or be it something over and over that you keep doing, any sort of skill that you need to develop, it could be any instrument, any sport, anything that you're doing, when you keep doing it over and over in a loop, when you keep memorizing something over and over, it just becomes like your second nature. You can do the same thing in your sleep. So I think loop in that way is extremely helpful in evolution and growth, and for anyone to be better in that way. So yes, removing the whole life story and the philosophical aspect of it, I think loop definitely helps in evolution.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So what is looping in the context of music? Is it close to tiling? Is it close to just joining certain things, or is it just a set of rhythm? Because this is my basic understanding. That's why, like,
Right.
this question is like a set of rhythm to create a bass texture, or even on top layers you create those textures. Like, in if you can just give a understanding of it.
So, looping in general, the word means like it's like a repetition of in music, especially repetition of a musical phrase, or a part of a song or whatever, and using either a hardware like a loop station or a looper or a loop pedal, or even like a software like a plugin, or you have a DAW or whatever through Ableton. And so in music, looping is just a repetition of a musical phrase. And I think tiling, or that would be a little, because it's about layering your vocals on top of each other. So it's like overdubs, and you can also have multi tracks. Like the looper that I have, on one phrase or on one track, you have three tracks there, or actually six. The new one has six, but you have maybe in a basic looper you have three tracks. On one track you can have as many overdubs as possible. You can keep layering it on top of each other. So it's almost like, it's you're creating a bed of polyphonic soundscapes. More to say, like some of them would be rhythmic, some of them would be melodic. You combine it all together to form a piece of music, which you would call maybe your song arrangement, or something. It could be instrumental, it could be, I being a vocalist, I create vocal loops, and I sing my main song on top of it. So I create like a nice bed, like a nice soundscape for myself, and I sing on top of it. So it's layering of different instruments or vocals, or any sound that you're creating using an instrument, or even using your mouth to create sounds. It's just creating a bed. So I think uh, it's in that way, it's something that creates a good soundscape for you to perform on, especially when it comes to live looping. But I think looping in general would just mean like repetition of a musical phrase, or a part of some song or whatever, that keeps repeating over and over, and in tempo, in certain tempo that you've created for yourself.
Mm-hmm. So, but sorry, like one dumb question. When you said
Yeah.
that you have a looper, is it like a hardware device? Is it like, how does it, like? Can you explain a
Yes,
little bit about it?
I have a hardware device. It's called Boss RC 50, was my first looper. It's by
Mhm.
Roland, Boss Roland. But the one that I bought recently is RC 300, and it's got six tracks. So it's got like ample opportunities to create different sections of your song. And this one's hardware, but I've also in the past looped with Ableton, which is a DAW, on using the laptop and sound card, and a few MIDI controllers that I've used for live looping in the past. but I somehow prefer like stomping the pedal and, keeping it
Hmm.
very organic. And I enjoy while playing an instrument. I'm just, pressing the pedal at the right time to kind of create that loop that I want to, rather than it being fixed in Ableton, because this is very organic. Like the first loop that you create, the time that you set for yourself defines your whole song. So if
Hmm.
that is wobbly and that's moving, like if you're doing like a, if it's off a little, also a little quickly, if you stomp the pedal a little uh,
Before.
later or
Hmm.
before, you're gone. So that's why it's more challenging, and it's more gratifying when you are able to do that and you master that. So I enjoy the process of using the hardware more than the software. Of course, there are limitations with that, because I can only use a certain kind of instruments, and with Ableton I can have a lot of pre-recorded loops, and I can just trigger them. So it saves me time to get into my song much quicker, as opposed to, creating every little loop, and it takes like maybe 3-4 minutes to build a song, and then I start singing my song. So there are limitations, but as a performer who's just getting into the zone of looping, I think the hardware is, it's phenomenal. But
Hmm.
if you're performing live and having a live audience, they would really enjoy you being in your zone and being very immersive about your performance. But after maybe one or two songs, they just want to have a great time. So that's when you kind of get the whole performance in place, and trigger things quickly and getting into your song as quickly as possible to get them grooving. So I think it's, a mix of both is when is what works ideally. You should be able to satisfy yourself as a musician and things that you want to do when it comes to exploring live looping, but you're playing it for the audience as well, right? So you've got to
Yeah.
keep both things in mind.
Correct, correct. Yeah, it's so fascinating. In fact, when you say that you want to like just stamp the pedal, and I could visualize a lot of people generally. Yeah, I mean, when they're performing it, it just on fire sometimes. And my exposure to looping has been when the multimedia computers were just entering the market. I was fortunate to have one, and there was a software called Dance EJ. Are you
Oh,
aware of it?
no, was there a looper inside?
No, so there wasn't a looper, but it was almost like a garage band or a iMovie these days. You have
Okay.
layers, and then there is a library where it's just like dish and then dish
Hmm.
dish, and you just keep uh, stacking them next to each other horizontally and almost create a timeline of these dish 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 continuously. So I
Okay.
used to play that and have a lot of fun. But yeah, I remember it's kind of those who have heard will sort of resonate with it. Dance EJ will get the
Okay,
yeah.
lovely.
Cool. So, and any short history you could give, like when before you, how did you get into this? Anything you can talk about generally looping as such, like where did it, was it accidental? Like any history that you have like just stumbled upon,
I
or
don't, I don't know if it was looping, but I had seen like a while back. I'd seen a video of Les Paul. It
Mhm.
was some television show, and it's a very old video. So I think Les Paul was um, doing something with Mary Ford, his wife, and she was singing, and he was playing the guitar, and he had like this tape, two tapes he had, and he was looping his guitars on one, and then it was playing back also, and then he was overdubbing. So basically he was doing overdub, which is not exactly looping, but it's, I think it's somewhere laid the foundation of looping, because no one was, we'd have all live bands play together, and all like the full orchestra would play together, the singers would play together, and it'll be taped together. But the whole concept of multi-tracking and having, all these different layers of different, even the vocals could have, the same person could do an overdub of on their own vocals. So that was something very new at that time. So I'd seen a video which was really sweet, where Mary Ford was singing, and he explained the whole idea of um, overdubs and multi-tracking. But I think that sort of somewhere must have laid the foundation of looping, because later I've heard that Terry Riley started something called repetitive music. Maybe it was called ostinato music, because that's like very loop based, like anything that is
mm,
repetitive. But I think that time there were more like tapes were being used digitally. Music was not being created, so
mm,
it was much harder, and you had to kind of create a tape loop like
mm,
manually, and cut the tape from splice it from one end and the other end, and then just have a loop that keeps playing, and then on top of it you'd record other layers. So it was pretty complicated. But I think much later, when the whole digital audio came into
mm,
being, we were all so crazy about it that you can cut chop things and just like do it. I think that's the time when live looping came into place. Just
mm,
the geniuses, all the minds started working. How do we create this in a small software? I remember like the first one, probably it must be, it's not too old. I think it's in the late 90s or 2000s is when loopers, like hardware loopers, came into
mm.
being.
Oh,
First
okay.
probably being Jam Man, and so it's not a very old one, but looping as a concept was being used by many artists from the 1950s or 60s.
Oh,
So I think I feel like I don't know who's the founder of live looping, to be very
mm-hmm,
honest,
mm-hmm,
because I haven't really read about it. I just happened to see this video of Les Paul playing, and I somewhere think that maybe this was the foundation of looping, and probably
mm-hmm,
that's when it started. But it's quite interesting to see, how the evolution has happened, and now live looping has become like extremely popular. I've come across such amazing, mind blowing live looping artists all across, actually. My
mm,
first introduction to live looping was watching Katie Tunstall, and she was singing a song. She's a wonderful singer and guitarist. So she had this small, I think it was a Boss RC1 small looper, and that didn't have too many tracks. It was just one track that she could
oh,
record. So she did her song Black Horse and a Cherry Tree. That's the song she did. And I just wanted to cover that song. I was just like, how did she do that? And what is she doing? What is this looper thing? That's when I started, exploring more, and I saw a bunch of other artists, Beardy Man, and doing a lot of vocal looping back then. This was like in 2009 or something, 9 or 10,
mm-hmm,
and I saw a bunch of loopers, and I thought I want the best one. I will save up money, and I don't know what I'm going to do with it, but I will explore this and I will figure out what this is about. And back then, Furtado's, that's in Bombay, was like really big, in terms of providing instruments and everything. And I called them up and I said, I want this Boss RC50 loop station. They were like, what? We have not heard of this. We don't have this. And how do we, I said, just like import it, just get this for me. I don't care, even if it takes a month. And I think it took a month for them to kind of get this to
nice.
India, because firstly, they had not heard about it and they kept asking me, what are you going to do with it? And I said, I don't
Mm,
know. Just bring
mm,
it. And this was, I think, some 34 or 35K back then.
wow. Mm-hmm,
So, which was, I was saving up and buying an instrument which you don't know anything about, and what's going to come out of it is, people still buy like a guitar. They know that they're going to practice on it and they'll take it out live and start performing. I had no clue, but it was just the gut feeling telling me that, okay, kuch to main karungi, something I will work out, something I'll do with this. I don't care. Even if, I keep it in my bedroom and just keep jamming on it, I will do that. And that's
amazing.
when it all started. I just got this, and for at least 2 months, I was just figuring this thing out left, right, and center, and I used my vocals as and the main principal instrument, and created a lot of song arrangements doing that. And one day I just called a friend of mine and I said, please, can you just shoot from your phone? Can you shoot a video of me just performing one of my songs? And there was one original that I played it. I mean, I've not even released it. It was just, one of those random songs that you come up while improvising on the looper. And I sent that online for some talent contest. I remember it was called Music to Deal, and they
Mm,
were selecting one band from all across India to represent in Berlin Popcom Festival. This was in 2010. And I had no idea. I just thought, oh, let me just, it's innovative for me. I don't know what happens to others. Let me just send this video, that living room video on phone video, and very bad quality. I'm in my pajamas, and I'm just like very chilled out, just doing my thing and singing. And I little did I know that I'd get selected to represent India, and it was quite an eye opener. So I had my looper, and I went for the Popcorn Festival, and even there, it was such a beautiful experience. And doing Hindustani vocals on a
Mm.
looper, just arranging it in a way and singing my own Hindi songs sometimes. It was a mix of my music is a mix of like the songs I create. It's a lot of fusion. So I think doing that was very interesting for people also to watch. And I was just, using this as much as I can, as much as I could, to the best of, what my capabilities. Of course, later I explored a lot more, but that was my introduction to, and even my entry as a independent singer songwriter in the scene. Otherwise, I was a part of the band Asma and songs like Chandu Ke Chacha. These were the songs we were known for. So I didn't have any song on my own name, like something that I have written. Even if
Mhm.
I had, but they were not out. And so the being a live looping artist or a singer songwriter who's uh, expressing herself through the loop station was something that kickstarted, I would say, my career as an independent artist. So I definitely owe it to my RC50, the first ever
Mm.
looper that's
Yeah,
still
and
with me.
Furtados. And
And
Furtado.
Furtados, absolutely, absolutely.
Correct.
Yeah.
And did your personal sort of experience with vocals and music training helped, or the instrument itself developed some things?
So I think music training, the riyaz or the vocal training was one aspect of it. I mean, that's something that was there, but Berkeley helped a lot in improvisation, in just like being exposed to different genres of music and being exposed to world music, just meeting musicians from all across the world. It was not something that I would ever imagine, and just collaborating with them, having them play on my album. And it was it was almost like a dream when I think about it now. Also, when I look back and see that, okay, I have videos of me jamming with them. I'm like, did this really happen? Like, was I a part of all this? And were these my songs? Did I write them? And I was just, mesmerized with the kind of talent that was there. And I think that helped me a lot with improvisation. And that improv was further developed much, much, much more with the loop station, because I could just say random things on the looper and just try and loop them and create like a very interesting, sonically interesting, something that, like you can use your voice for saying things. You can use your voice as a bass. You can use your voice as a kick and snare or different sounds that you make. So I made very funny sounds with it, just like the more you can modulate your voice. And it might sound silly if I do this sound right now, it might just sound very silly. But
Mm.
when I start looping it, and it is in it's complementing some other sounds, it's
Mm.
coming with permutation combinations. This is a very interesting sound to create when it comes in a looper. So I was like, no sound is bad sound. Anything that comes out of your mouth can be used very innovatively, and you can create a very beautiful piece out of it, something very interesting. So nothing was wrong in my head. Anything that came out could be developed into something very interesting when I had the looper with me. So I think it just opened up my perspective of how music should be approached and dealt with. So a lot of improv, it really helped. A lot of experimentation with my music, I think loop station brought all of that.
Mm.
Yeah.
Amazing. So before we jump into the next part, can I
Hmm.
crack a very silly joke?
Absolutely, I love silly
Because
jokes.
because I know we are like on a very different plane, but I couldn't stop myself. Do you know what is a 13 cube?
13 cube.
Yeah. How much is 13 cube?
No.
It's surur. Tera
Surur.
tera 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 surur. I'm
Oh.
sorry. Okay, let's move
Wow.
on. It's looped.
Let me let me call Himesh. Let my God.
Yeah. So
Wow.
I'm going to ask a little sort of uncomfortable question because it's very difficult for a creative person to break his process or her process.
Mm.
But how do you arrive at a final song? Like, what comes first? Is it? I know it's simultaneous, but is like creating that bass track, or the in between sort of the bigger loop or the tune, or everything happens organically. If you can break.
There is no one set way of doing it. Like I don't have a set approach of going
No,
about
but
creating a
from
song.
creating like say maybe 400 tracks so far, have you observed any pattern within yourself or in this journey?
Sometimes a loop can lead to a beautiful composition or a full-fledged song. Just a loop, and it could be a percussive loop. It could be like percussive rhythmic, or it could be some sort of melodic line or a phrase or a motif that kind of helps create something else. Sometimes it's you know, a chord progression, which for me happens sort of rarely because I believe in melody more than harmonies. I add the harmonies later to give color to the melody, but for me, the melody stands intact first. So sometimes, most of my writing, sometimes the melody comes in, and sometimes the words that I've written, I put them into a melody. Sometimes it's an emotion that leads to certain kind of words, and then the words define what kind of music it should have. You know, what kind of harmonies and the colors of the chords that kind of song. So if it's maybe something about life, for example, as a very basic. Something about life or life lesson or whatever, the kind of structure that it should have. Maybe it's hopeful, or maybe it's heartbreaking, or maybe it's so the kind of the pace of the song, like what is my tempo going to be. Even on the looper, I sometimes just come up with different ideas. So sometimes it's that's why I said there's never a set method of doing it. It's sometimes the words that lead to a melody. It's the melody sometimes, and sometimes it's just a loop that can just create like the whole, you have the whole vision of the song in front of you with just that one loop, and it just organically builds. A lot of my compositions, I flesh them out on the looper. So I practice them on the looper. So what happens is sometimes I've got like some great vocal ideas, and I just save them on my looper as, as memories that I can keep when I'm actually getting into creating the song. So I go back to the looper and I hear, okay, this was the bass line, how I sang my bass line. Okay, I'm going to have the bass line this way. And this is the way my percussions were going. This is the way the groove should go. So looping really helps in practice, of course, in getting your timing really tight. Also in composition. So in songwriting and composition, it really helps. It's just a tool that you can use for so many things. So my approach has mostly been the melody first. I would say majority of the times.
Mhm. And the way you just now said about life or life lesson, I'm sure there are songs in the traditional world, not in the looping world, but generally there are certain moods and certain rag on which it is based, and the rag itself emotes or gives that emotion. Similarly,
Right.
here when you're writing, do you see any intervention of traditional rag
So
or?
I don't purposely look for a rag when I'm creating a melody. Of course, at the back of your head, you always know that okay, these are the set of notes that you're going for, and this would eventually create this raga. But I don't really, I'm not really very confined when it comes to rag because I'm not really composing something which is pure. in terms
Mm.
of just being confined to that rag. So it's going to be a mix of uh, different ragas eventually when you come to analyzing, when you go to analyzing a certain composition. But because theory and the harmony is also a very important aspect of adding colors to your melody, is a very important aspect of what I do, because
Mm.
I do a lot of a cappella versions also. So for me, it's not just melody, it's the harmony that is created around it that adds color to it. So a rag in specific, a melody would have its own color. There are different timings पे rags गाए जाते हैं and everything. It creates this kind of mood. वो बारिश हो जाएगी, वो तूफान आ जाएगा, or all that is fine. But I feel like within that melodic structure, that it's based on a melodic structure, our
Mm.
Indian classical. But I love the play of harmony along with it. So I love to add like chords, different colors the chords give to any composition. So because I have that, I feel like it's a nice blend and a nice fusion of colors, and of course it creates a certain uh, much more interesting mood. I think एक तो राग का color होगा, and the
Mm.
mood that rag has, and of course the chords that are supporting it. So I think I enjoy working
Yeah,
that way.
interesting. And like if you have to repeat the same song or the same track in some other concert or some other gig, does it have to be strictly like that, or you are open to exploring on the fly? I mean, almost like a Hindustani classical where you are also improvising while you are performing.
Are you talking about live looping? Like doing
Yes.
a live
Yeah.
looping version?
Yeah. Or like as in like yeah, simple question would be live does do two same track live loopings live
What,
loops can be
what
different.
what happens is when I do my performances live looping and I use the hardware, I don't have pre-recorded or set loops that I create. So every time I perform is different. So
Mm.
every time I create, so today possibly I'm in the mood of a different sort of a bass line. Of course, the structure of the song remains the same because that's my composition. But the way I would approach the arrangement, if I'm singing some harmony parts, maybe I'd sing them a little differently another day, because I don't have a set idea that okay, I have memorized this and this is the way I'm going to do. And that's what live looping is about. It's about that
Mm.
improv. It's about what you're feeling today. That comes out. The way you are approaching a piece of music is how it comes out. So even if I have a set structure and I'm practicing at home for a gig, a live looping gig that I'm practicing for at home, I would do it because I'm getting used to thinking that okay, I'm going to build this song, and then I'm going to do my verse, then I'll do my chorus, then I'll do my bridge, and then I'll come back to the final chorus. This is the structure that I'm practicing for. But when I'm practicing that at home, uh, I know this is my timing when I'm going to play the guitar and then hit the press button, just stomp the
Mm.
pedal at the
Mm.
right time. So I'm practicing for that. I'm not really practicing the oohs and the ahs and the harmonies. I'm not practicing. I'm just practicing so that I hit this on time and I get all
Mm.
my arrangements on time. So my practice is that. On stage, what I practice back home, the kind of sounds that are created are never the same. Are never the same. The improv that happens, like in between, I leave a section for improv where I'm doing a lot of vocal improv, adding layers and stuff. That is never the same. It's always different. It's always going to be different because I have not. It's not recorded anywhere. I'm just doing it all at that very time, in real time. That's happening in
Mm.
real time, so it's
Mm.
bound to be open to interpretation and the kind of mood that I'm in at that time. So
Got
I think it's very, very organic. It's
very
very
organic.
exciting, and it's just you end up exploring new musical ideas even when you're performing live. Sometimes just it pushes your boundaries of creativity. It's just like you are exploring so much every single time. And in a live setting is even more exciting because it can be a very engaging performance, when you're
Mm.
coming up with ideas and stuff. And I've
Yeah.
always witnessed that live
Yeah.
performance with an audience, live looping. It's so much fun. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I can imagine. And in fact, my next question, before my next question, just thought I'll ask: is it sort of the like what your process is generally? Can we safely say it's mostly the same for other artists, or it's everyone could have different process?
Everyone could have a different process.
Okay.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
The way you can approach this is so different. Like if you look
No,
at
so
other,
sorry
yeah,
to interrupt, but yeah, the what I was trying to understand is from what you said, seems like you are doing a riyaz of certain things which you want to like master on, which is kind of the timing and more of the technical aspect of it, because maybe your melodic structure or your vocals are at a certain level which you are comfortable with. Certain people would
right.
be comfortable with the timing because they have practiced it over a period of time, but they practice more on the vocals and the delivery.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
your style where you're working on the technical aspect, is this a common in the world of looping because
So
it's kind of complex?
I think live looping requires a certain, you know, certain time of, you have to give it some time to practice it, so that when you get into a setting where you just have to stomp the pedal at the right time, it's just getting that timing right and adding layers to it. And how do you arrange your song within that, so like a looper would have 3 tracks. How do you arrange your song? So some people would add maybe just the guitars and a little vocal harmonies in the first phrase. Second track they would have like a bass line or a kick and snare, and third track they would add maybe a bridge section which has a little different chords. So they would loop all these in so it's how you arrange your song in your head. Some people might just end up recording everything on track 1. So how do they make it interesting? You mute one and you let one section go. So interest, it has to, in your head, as an arranger, you have to plan everything in advance. So that is the preparation that I do. That okay, I'm going to
Mm,
do this and then switch to arrangement. Because in vocal harmonies and stuff, that just comes to me naturally. You're absolutely
mm,
right. So that, but for another artist, maybe just he or she knows that arrangement. I know bang on that these are my 3 places for arrangement. But what sounds am I going to use in the first one? What am I going to do in the second
mm,
one? And how do I improvise in the third one? Maybe they have those questions, in mind, and that's what they need to work on. Uh, there are artists like, FKJ, like French Kiwi Juice, that you have to see, French artists, multi instrumentalists, and next level music, like in terms of, he has a room, a soundproof room, and he works on Ableton, so the door, and he has like some controllers. He plays bunch of guitars, bass, I think saxophone also. He plays a lot of instruments. So if you see, I was blown away seeing the kind of content that he's coming up with, and he's doing all this on the go. You can see that he's building up a track in front of you, and he's tweaking things, getting levels in and out and everything. So he has done that homework, how he's gonna make his arrangement. He's put down everything that okay, after this I'm gonna go to the saxophone. So there is a rehearsal that has happened. It is
mm,
live
mm.
looping, it's organic, but there is a rehearsal. It's not like he's coming up with parts
Everything.
on the go. But
Mm,
sometimes I'm sure when he was doing it for the first time, it was all hidden trial. It was all practice. Okay, this is working. Let me undo this. This is not working. Let me undo this. So, good thing is that loopers have one undo button. Your last loop, you can undo it also. So, if you've worked on a beautiful piece and one last loop is really wonky and you've done something bad on it, you can undo it. So a lot of loopers have that. Artists like him, and obviously the world has known live looping because of Ed Sheeran. A single man doing playing his guitar and singing, and but even before Ed Sheeran started, there were so many other artists doing live looping, but it was not so well known, to a lot of people. But so many, Beardy Man, Reggie Watts, Kimra is another artist. Dub FX uses a lot of electronic sounds. He uses a boss bass pedal and creates like all these electronic sounds with his vocals. So that's
Mm.
everyone uses them very differently,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
everyone has a different approach and they use it very differently. That's
Mm.
what the beauty of it is.
Yeah,
So
yeah. And plus added on top of it the live part of it, which is so amazing. Which brings to my next question is I remember having a chat with Varun Grover, and where he said कि creativity I think दो तरीकों से आती है. एक constraint डालो तो, so when you
hmm,
like really put lot of constraints, you are creative, and sometimes you are just unbounded, like just blue sky thinking, and that's so it's always a pull and push.
hmm.
What's the kick for you in looping? Like when look at it now, I see that there could be many layers which could be created. But
Hmm.
when I before the show, actually before this conversation, I used to think एक set rhythm रहेगा, set ताल रहेगा, या set tempo रहेगा. So obviously that constraint also helps in bringing more creative angle. But any example from your sort of work? Kya, like what's the kick in that? What's the trip on why you loop?
um I think for me it was it started off uh, with an emotional value. I just like when I started off and I was trying to make my own music and meet musicians in the indie independent circuit. It was sort of hard for me to let people know that I have some songs that I've written myself and I have my own ideas and stuff, because um, when you're coming out of something that is so well established, especially asthma. Asthma was, I was part of asthma, and I was known as a pop star, and it was known everywhere that songs like Chandu Ke Chacha, and this was known everywhere, and it was that era, that was the time then, and these were songs that were written for us. It was not, I wouldn't say, and I can openly say this now, that it was not my sound. It was not something, the music that was coming out of me. It was uh, fed to us. It was spoon fed. It was presented to us on a platter. It was a great opportunity, great learning curve. I was just 18 when it started. So very, very grateful to that. But that was not my sound. So
Mm,
when you grow up, and when you grow up in a scenario where there is music all around you, you feel that okay, you also have a certain sound, you also have some voice when it comes to music, and you would like to explore that more and let people know that there is a part of you which is also a singer songwriter, and not just a singer who's given a song to sing. You also have your ideas. So I think that transition, and that transition from known as a chubby little girl from pop stars to a girl who would be able to write her own songs and maybe probably even lead a live band with just with her own songs and have her own songs, was a difficult one for me. I felt that even when I was going to meet people or trying to secure a gig, independent gig anywhere with my original songs, there would be things like, oh, she's going to sing Chandu Ki Chacha, or is she's going to, just do those songs and that time is gone and everything, things like those. So it took
mm,
me some time. The need had happened in for this for me, especially at that time, because I wanted to do something which would make me very self-sufficient, and I was feeling the need to kind of meet more people, but I wasn't able to. So that was the time I think Loop Station came at the right time in my life, where I was just so
mm,
lost and I wanted to put down all my ideas in one machine, which is just gonna, you know, throw all of that out and let people know, okay, this is what's on my mind. And that, uh, live looping did exactly that, and that's how I got my first break as a singer songwriter at Blue Frog. And when
mm,
I played that, because it was innovative, because people had not seen anyone else, at least in India, do like a live looping performance in public, and who's this girl? Oh, she's the same girl from Asma, and she's doing this innovative technique and she's singing her songs, she's like, these are her songs. And people got really interested suddenly when they saw. And then I met a lot of musicians, who came to me. It's like, oh, we should jam, we should chill,
mhm,
we should jam. I was like, that's what I wanted. And that's how it
mm,
started. So I feel like there was it was a very personal need for me that I started enjoying looping, because it gave me in cliched whatever, some sort of wings to kind of, just explore the areas that I wanted to go to. And
Mm,
and for me, it just getting to know the looper every single day and seeing the possibilities of incorporating electronic loops, pre-recorded loops, using Ableton, just like, I was never a tech person, I was never into this. But when I got into the DAWs, the Logics and Cubase, and started arranging my own songs, and with the looper it all started. So I would say that it kind of put my brain into to a direction where it was ideal for me, because I wanted to be self equipped, I wanted to create my own songs. Now I even mix my own songs sometimes. I'm not a good mixing I'm not even an engineer, but I like my mixes sometimes because of the whole sensibilities that I've created over the years, with
mm,
sound. So I feel like there was an emotional need at that time for me to explore this, and that's why I have a very strong attachment to looping as an art form. But when I jam on the looper, when I practice on the looper, I, for some reason, and I think someone who's doing it will know exactly, who's doing this, practicing live looping and enjoys it, that I can't keep track of time. When I get started on the looper, I am in a zone which is sort of a meditation. It's like, when your brain, meditation is what? That you don't have thoughts come in and go out, and what am I going to do? What am I going to eat today? What time, is this tomorrow, meeting tomorrow? When you don't have these thoughts and you're just focused on one thing, or maybe shunya, maybe zero. So that was the time you're fully concentrated. When you play a sport, you're fully concentrating on that one thing, your goal, maybe the ball or anything that you're doing. So I think that's why I can't keep track of time, and it's sort of intoxicating in a way,
mm.
because I have cancelled so many plans, which, because I'm in the middle of like creating something with my looper, and I've spent like 4 5 hours, and I'm like, oh, I lost track of time. I'm supposed to meet someone and it's not happened. And I don't feel bad about it. The
Mm.
guilt is not there. So that's when you know that you are enjoying something that you're doing. And I feel like when you can enjoy something where you can't even keep track of time, that's not a time wasted. I think it's the most beautiful thing to do when you have, and that happens to me with the looper. It's just every day. Actually, when I come to my studio also, it's all plugged in, and sometimes I'm just, when I don't have too much work, I just sit on it and explore new things, and start looping, and so many ideas keep coming all the time.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah.
In fact, great. I don't exactly know the name of the author, but there is a book called as Flow, which exactly talks about this. It's almost a meditative zone. It's on Amazon. Maybe I'll put that link. Yeah,
Oh, lovely.
awesome. Great to hear this part of it. Yeah, last two questions. Based on, I mean, again, I'm just going into the academic part of it, which is, are there different genres in this, subgenres, or different approaches to looping, or anything which is evolving? Because now that you said it's very new, I'm sure people are evolving in different direction. But the way jazz has like multiple subgenres or something like that, is this form has other subcategories in it?
I'm not aware of any subcategories. I would say that there are different approaches, to live looping. In terms of approaches, one would be keeping the time in mind. Like, you have looping on time, so you have a set tempo, maybe 4/4 or whatever tempo you set for yourself. So there is looping that is done keeping that in mind, and then there's also a free looping where you just have like soundscapes and textures. Like, a lot of violinists and cellists would come up with, just creating beds and very floaty, airy sort of looping, which, obviously it'll also have a tempo eventually,
Hmm.
because when you're
Hmm.
looping something, you'll end up having a certain BPM,
Hmm.
but it's still free flowing, because you're not following a certain 4/4 beat, or just like locking everything on that 4/4 beat. It's very fluid. So there is, artists would do all these kind of looping techniques they would use. um I don't know about genres. I would feel that there are uh, looping with electronic looping, electro live looping, using the DAWs and the computers, and then there is a very organic sort of a looping where you have these acoustic instruments, be it percussions and acoustic guitars, or some hang drums and whatever, so violin and cellos, and so a lot of looping is done, everything when everything is like mic'd, or maybe a line in or whatever. But with electronic, of course, it's everything is in your DAW. So a lot of artists use like a mix of both. A lot of artists would do only electronic. A lot of artists like FKJ, again, I'm like fascinated with him, so I'm using his name again. He would use like the saxophone and also the electric guitars and some sounds, electronic sounds that he would use and mix up. And there is like a fabulous guitarist, Tash Sultana, who'd come up and sings also. So she would actually create like loops with the guitar. That's very organic that she does. Dove effects again is more electronic. So a lot of different artists
Hmm.
use it very differently. So I don't think it's like there is no, and it can be used in any genre. Like you
Hmm.
can use it for jazz, hip hop, anything in the whole pop scenario. Of course, I'm essentially pop and fusion, so I use it for that, but I think it can be used in anything. But I think the one drawback is it's difficult to change the key. Like once you set
Hmm.
a key, like you can't modulate from one key to the other, and even the time signature, at least in the loopers. So if you're going for a 4 4 4, you can't switch to a 6 8 suddenly. The time
Hmm.
signatures, because you've created that whole thing in that. I mean, there are very few songs. Popular songs are always in like one set tempo. But if you're going very experimental, like if you're into Dave Matthews Band and suddenly you switch from one time signature to the other, the looper can't do that. So I think there's still like a little bit of limitation here and there. But with what it can do, I think the possibilities are so many. So I think we
Correct.
should just try and explore as much as we can with whatever it can do at this
Yeah,
point of time.
yeah, yeah. Sorry, I'm going to ask maybe a little stupid question, and I don't know whether this question also makes sense. But when you said key can't be changed, I understand. But the
Hmm.
tempo, I've like, I mean, with intense Riyaz, someone like Zakir Hussain, you can go to like 8 beats and come back to the 4 beats cycle again, like just double looping on it, right? Is that, am I
Yeah,
understanding it correctly?
yeah. So what I mean was, supposing if you're going for a 4 4, you're doing 1 2 3 4, 1 2 3, this is going right. So you
Yeah.
could do in between in this structure. This is your structure and that's not going to change. So it's
Hmm.
going 1 2 3. You can do 1 2 3 4 5 6. You can sing that in between, or you can do 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8, 1 2 3 4 5. You can do all of that. You can do 4 beats in that one beat
Oh.
also. That's
Hmm.
that you can do. But you
Okay.
can't do 1 2 3 4. Now you can't change this to 1 1 2 3 4 5. You can do this, but 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 in that same tempo.
Hmm.
No, you
Hmm.
can't change the signature. You can change the tempo of there is a button in there is a knob in loop station where you can increase the tempo. Supposing your BPM
Hmm.
is 100, you can make it to 105, 100. But certain acoustic sounds don't sound very good when you tweak
Correct.
the tweak the sound, the tempo. So
Got it.
sounds a little off, but you can do it. You can.
Yeah.
With
Yeah.
electronic sounds, you can do it anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. I want to conclude with one last question, and which is like, what's the long-term future of looping, especially now, digital world? I've already
Um,
written down few artists whom I should follow, and I'll put them in the show notes. But what do you think
um,
is the future?
I think future is very bright because right now people are exploring, with the metaverse and AI, everything is coming into being. So I'm forgetting there's this person, and I will write the name down and I'll send it to you. There's a person I follow, a live looping artist in Canada. Um, and she's doing her live looping performances in metaverse. So, just like creating
Hmm.
like a full visual, interesting visuals for her own set. It's called Jungle Beats or something. I'll show you. And the kind of music she's looping also is on the same line. So I think just creating a beautiful presentation, visual, audio visual presentation with live looping can be so, like, it's organic at the same time, like visually you're just blown away. So I think a lot of all these visual treats along with looping collaborations like these in the future will make it even more interesting. As an art form itself is so interesting, and it's ever evolving. I think now, like, you can also, a lot of people do that, but even with the looper that I have, I can get a click out, like a click out, which is like a tempo reference for the whole band. So I can have like a full-fledged band and have my looper, and I can actually loop along with the band. So I can do it doesn't have to be a one woman thing. I can actually have these tempo signals to the whole band, and they can I can loop them. I can loop their instruments. I can play a live performance
Wow.
along with the looper and my. So I think the possibilities are endless. It's just someone just has to, explore these. And the whole AI business, how it's blowing out of proportion right now everywhere. And
Yeah.
I think someone's going to find some sort of collaboration with live looping also on AI. So I mean, I don't think it's very far off. You never know. I might be the one to figure out, because I'm just fascinated with AI right now. But
Amazing.
and I don't think it's. I think it's going to be evolving even more. And the kind of the kind of improv that has happened, and the kind of improvement the new looper has, the one I have, is remarkable from the last one. So I feel like it's ever growing. And I actually met people from Roland, from Boss. They had come down from the US, and I actually met them and showed them a few of my videos, and we'd be doing a lot of things together. So I'm very excited about doing a lot of things with Boss, like the makers of the Loop Station, of course, and just exploring a lot more possibilities with them. So that's very exciting.
Superb, superb. On this note, we can end. But I wanted to add one more thing. We started off in a philosophical note,
Yeah.
and I want to conclude with that. Is well, utpatti, sthiti, or lay is also in a loop, and you are very close to it. So all the power to you.
How
And
sweet.
yeah, yeah. So like meditation is definitely going to help, and
Oh, yes.
yeah. So yeah, all power to you. Thanks a lot for giving your time. Lot to learn. Lot
Thank you.
which lot of insights shared. So thanks a lot, and looking
Thank you.
forward
Thank
to
you so
have
much.
you again.
Absolutely, Kedar. Thank you so much. And that last line was just like so beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. And that's it from today's Gyan session. For show notes and more Gyan, visit audiogyan.com. And if you wish to connect with me, I am at Audiogyan Moments on Instagram. Until then, take care.